Hi, this is Charlie Mato-Toyela with BlueBearFlutes.com. Here on YouTube is Blue Bear Arts, and also on our Facebook you can find us both ways, Blue Bear Flutes and Blue Bear Arts. What I'm going to do today with our Native American flute making series is just show you how to make a really quick little crow or raven totem. And the raven totem is one that is kind of special to me for a number of reasons. Number one, know all this great ancient history and stories about crows, and that's kind of important to me. Number two, which probably should actually be number one, but that other one was the first one I thought about sharing with you. The first flute I ever made, my wife Jessie, was a crow flute, which is kind of neat, little piece of trivia there. And then also, like I said, we get a good handful of requests for them. So I'm going to show you how to make this little crow totem. This is just a pattern that I use out here in the shop. If you go to my website at the time this video is available, you'll be able to see the downloadable crow pattern that you can get from our info section. So go there, click on it, download it, print it out, and when you print it out, as I've told you in other videos about totem making, I would suggest using a piece of carbon paper. Lay your carbon paper on top of your wood that you're going to cut your totem out of. Put your paper with the correct crow size that you're going to make, because on the paper you'll notice there's several different sizes. So put that paper, whichever size you're going to use, on top of the location you want it there, hold it down, and trace on top of it. Super easy. This is a little different way we do out here in the shop, because it keeps me from having to use carbon paper over and over and over and over and over again. I think I just heard one of my little crow friends talking. Anyway, so what you're going to do is make this little raven or crow totem, and I'm going to trace it out if you want to step over here and take a look. Okay, so later on, if you decide you're making too many crow totems that you don't want to use the paper and carbon paper anymore, you can always cut your own little piece of wood out to do this with. But what I'm going to do is just trace him around, and you want to make sure that you don't put his head into any crazy knot holes if there was a knot there or anything. You want to be mindful of what this is going to look like whenever you make it. Sometimes you may decide, hey, that knot hole looks like an eyeball. Maybe I want to put that centered right where his eye is. It's up to you. It may not turn out the same on both sides, but let's go ahead and trace this guy and get him cut out. Okay, so just kind of a rough picture. You see there's some little scribble marks here and there. You can do anything you want to on this guy. Make his mouth a little bit bigger, make it look a little more realistic like that. If you want that old European type of crow, then you might want to give him a bigger forehead right here, which they used to draw a lot. And some of the big boogers do have bigger foreheads. The ones we here have in the U.S. look more like my little cutout. And then back here, this represents one of his wings that's folded up, whereas this, of course, is his tail, and his under feathers here kind of help pronounce and define his tail. So, just to give you an idea, and if you want to watch me cut him out. Okay, so now you can kind of see what it is we start with. This is going to be my blank, I guess you could call it. And then from the blank, we're going to go ahead and sand him in a couple of very obvious spots where he needs to look more like a crow, and then a little bit of hand sandpaper, and that'll be it. I was going to show you what I'm going to do with this piece. This guy here is actually going to be my flat block. I'm going to cut it in a square in just a second. That this totem is going to mount on top of, so it'll be two pieces. It'll be much better than carving it out of a whole piece, and then the whole piece will be very difficult to size and shape the way that it needs to be done. So I'll show you in just a second here, but let's go ahead. We're just going to sand a couple of spots, get the obvious elements in their place. is probably a bad habit, by the way. Better to sand it underneath than it is on top. If something happens on top, it grabs it, it'll flip it around like that on you, so better to sand on the bottom side. Of course, you can do this with hand sandpaper just the same, which is the way we're going to wind up finishing it. So one of the elements, pointy shape for his head. Need to make this smooth. Okay, that's enough with this particular tool. Now I'm going to move over to my Dremel. So now with the Dremel, I'm going to come in here in the back side and put a little dish behind him. Same thing on this side. And then we're going to taper it out, or feather it out, as they say, pun intended. Now we're going to take the edges down. Watch. Doing something a little different now, kind of advanced here. And come back in here. Okay. So what I did just now was I come in and put a line in his back for the separation of his wings. So now you have a right wing and a left wing, and you can see his feathers up here. I believe with the pattern that I've made here, originally it was supposed to be so that this wing overlaps that one and vice versa if you want to go that way. This is a much quicker way. It still looks really beautiful when it's finished. It's not finished just yet, of course. And the reason I sanded these edges down is because if I'm using a power tool, I like to go ahead and let it do as much of the work as I can instead of having to come back and hand sand all that. That saved me a second or two worth of hand sanding, which when you make thousands and thousands of flutes, that's pretty helpful. Anyway, so I'm going to come back in, sit down, and start sanding this guy with sandpaper, which is how I'm going to finish it out. If you don't have tools like a belt sander or a Dremel, for example, or some other type of rotary tool, which is what I usually like to call it, but like anybody, I buy whatever I can find. It's a really good Dremel, I like it. But if you don't have those, don't feel hesitant. You can do all of this by hand. You can, instead of cutting this out with a scroll saw like I did, you can use a drill press and drill holes right along the line where you want to cut them out, and then just come back in and pop him right out. There's a lot of different ways to do this, and yes, absolutely you can carve this by hand. This day and age, we don't have to forget where we come from. Carving this stuff by hand is the whole reason I even know how to do this today. So let's sit down and take a look at some hand sanding, and we'll go from there. Okay, so just finishing up a little bit of hand sanding here. It's pretty easy to do. I'll show you the vital points that you want to cover. One important thing is to keep all your lines going in their intended directions. So, like for example, his beak right here, it goes up and then it kind of curves in some, and I want that to be nice and flat straight across to match this side. So, I'm kind of working on that a little bit. And then with whether it be Native American or European or what have you, most crows in carvings have a slightly larger head than actually what their normal body size would promote. Probably because they're smart. I'm not sure why. I don't think anybody would be able to be an authority on that particular crow carvings or paintings for that matter. And that little line that we put in the back, it'll look better in a few moments after I darken this with burning, it'll be a lot more obvious, and you get to see the finished product there. I think you'll really like it. While I'm doing this, and I'm going to point out some other key points that you need to sand here, I would like to tell you that you can probably tell by the way our shop looks. Every video we've made, I think it has had a different layer of wood on it. We stay busy. We really do. And in staying busy, you know, we clean this thing once a week now, but it's still got a lot of work, a lot of pieces laying around. Let's see. It's almost unimaginable. You want to make sure that you clean the bottom side of this guy with the sandpaper. Anywhere that there's a rough edge, like this right here is kind of rough because when you're cutting into the grain of a piece of wood, it's usually not very smooth. The sandpaper really is helpful in taking that off. And going back to my buddies that have been watching our videos and comparing me to great painters, man, I appreciate you. Still don't know if I'm deserving, but I would like to make a point here with respect to shape and perspective. So you know in your mind what the shape and size of this crow is, and you notice how wide his tail feathers are. Well, that's because I'm basically creating him with his tail feathers spread out. If his tail feathers were tucked in tight, which may be what you want to do, you should make them a little thicker, a little fatter, because more tail feathers on the small area usually makes it fatter, whereas I have it wide, it makes them kind of thin. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but just a perspective that you kind of need to be when you're carving something is in relationship to a drawing, which is where a lot of people get their ideas for these carvings. In relationship to a drawing, the drawing may not give you a full depth of view of his tail feathers, but when you carve it, you want to make sure that you're mindful. You wouldn't want a really thick tail feather that was really wide, or a really thin tail feather that was really narrow. So it's either going to be wide and thin or narrow and thick. I hope that makes sense. And also on the bottom side here, you want to make sure that you're sanding the curve underneath of his tail. Anywhere you can put some smooth edges, usually your audience, whether it be your family members or your friends, or if you're making these flutes to sell, or even just your dog Fido that's been patiently waiting by your side there for you to get done making flutes, they'll believe that this is a crow a lot more if it has the same or similar smooth contours and features of an actual crow. So try to keep that in mind, and keep in mind too that I personally suggest doing much more sanding than what I'm going to be doing here in this video. My flute blocks, I like to leave them a little, I won't say rough, but a little realistic, like, you know, they're really a piece of wood, so that you know that it's not an actual miniature crow sitting on top of your flute. That may be the direction you want to go. You may like the idea of having a perfect, very elaborately designed little crow on your flute. By all means, go there. Do that, please. We need people to do that kind of thing. I'm the kind of person that likes to make the symbolic version of things. And it used to be that I really liked carving the Cherokee version of all these animals. And yeah, I know it sounds kind of silly, but you know, studying my own people's art and everything, I do know that version, but it doesn't sell as well, which is unfortunate. This is probably going to spawn a lot of messages in my inbox. But anyway, if this was a Cherokee crow, he would be just a little bit pudgier and a little bit more squat with a much larger and more cartoony looking head, which I like a lot. But when I tell somebody it's a crow, I want them to think it's a crow and not necessarily my rendition of. There's a happy medium in there somewhere. So you can see, piece of 120 grit, 150 grit sandpaper, which for most of us is just finishing sandpaper. And I think I'm happy with the way this guy's turning out. I've just got to do my little burning technique and it'll be done. So see here. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video and find some use in it. One of our little quick tips. We've had some people ask us specifically to make these kind of flute blocks, and we have so many other requests for videos, and we're making them all the time. We have one really great one that's coming out next, and I've been waiting forever to show you guys some of, not necessarily my secrets, but I guess secrets of the flute world in general. So that's going to be a really amazing video. There is our beautiful little crow friend. Very simple. I mean, this video actually took place in the amount of time it took me to make it, so we're talking a 10-minute flute block here that would be worth your time. This is the actual block that goes underneath of it. What I'm going to do is glue this down with some poly or some cyan acrylic glue or even wood glue, whatever. Something that's going to hold it down nice and tight, and you can shape this block to fit your flute. So we've got a couple of flutes laying around. I left it long because it's going on one of my customers' flutes, so I've got to find the measurements for that. So you can make your flute block the size and shape it needs to be, like I would cut it off right there, and then you can center this. And the reason that you want to center the totems in the middle of a block when it's a two-piece totem block figure like this is so that you can tie your leather lace around this edge and around that edge. So a nice little tip there for you too if y'all haven't figured that out. Trust me, you're on your way if you're watching our videos. I'm sure you've already figured out how to do so much of this stuff, and me giving you this little piece here is just a formality and you making your own. You can do it yourself. So anyways, we'll put up a picture of the finished product here. A little crow totem I think I really like. I like him a lot, and I hope my buddy Daniel likes him. It's a good crow totem. And of course, if you have any other videos that you'd like to see or any questions about flute making or flute playing, please feel free to message us. We have so many new things coming out. We've got a new flute product coming out here very soon, which you guys are going to love, or two actually, come to think of it. We've got several, but just in time for the seasons, I should say, keeping the holiday. Which holiday is it? I don't know. But anyways, enough of my babbling. You guys take care. Happy flute making, and visit us on bluebearflutes.com as well as on our Facebook, Blue Bear Flutes, Blue Bear Arts. And you can always message us through either of those as well as here on YouTube at Blue Bear Arts. Take care and happy flute making.